Hi everyone, this is Linda from Let's Talk Prepping. And sometimes it's nice just to have some validation on why we're prepping from someone who's actually experiencing all the supply chain shortages and everything. And I'm over here at Corona News 123. Corona News 123. And the Goya CEO warns we're on the precipice of a global food crisis if we do not act now. And this is yesterday, April 29, 2022. He talked to Maria Bartiromo on Fox Business about this. Here's somebody who is actually producing food telling us this. Bipartisan congressmen call out Biden on mandates leading to food shortages. And this Representative Cindy Axne and Representative Randy Fenstra sent a letter to the Surface Transportation Board and requesting they take swift action to address the significant delays in rail shipments impacting agricultural goods. So we have that, which is telling us we knew about that, but it's kind of reinforcing everything for us. And of course, Joe Biden spoke of food shortages on March 24th. He said it's going to be real. Attack on food supply chain under Biden demands congressional hearings, starvation in months. So they're trying to get a hearing on this. And of course, Tucker Carlson mentioned food shortages. So we have all of these real things going on. And then over here on whiskeytangotexas.com, whiskeytangotexas.com, new controlled food system is now in place, and they will stop at nothing to accelerate their control. So who controls the food supply controls the people. Who controls the energy can control whole continents. Who controls money can control the world. The globalists already control the majority of money and are moving ever so swiftly to convert the energy system over into systems they are all invested in. And they're taking drastic measures to control the food industry while running much of it under the radar. If they control the seeds, they control the food. And if they control the food, they can use the digital ID to control consumer access to the food. So imagine a day when farmers markets no longer exist. You can't drive over to your local farmer to buy produce or cuts of meat. And the only food growing outside of the globalist secured indoor vertical farming and lab-grown meat facilities is in your windowsill garden or greenhouse. So what they're doing now is they're doing these indoor vertical farming. And there are all of these big companies, if you look here, that have invested in this and are running them. And of course, Monsanto Bayer is creating a gene-edited seeds for vertical farm companies. The USDA and the FDA have already approved lab-grown meat, genetically modified cattle, and are funding the globalists to research and develop cellular agriculture, as well as indoor growers and genetic companies. The food industry is already monopolized by 10 companies, the majority of which include Vanguard and BlackRock. What happens when they control all of the seeds, produce, and meat too? What happens when the produce and meat are all grown inside secured facilities after a gene splicer inside a petri dish? And farmland becomes dormant due to overreaching regulations, lack of supplies, and manufactured inflation. And this picture here shows the big 10 companies and what they control. So they're talking about the vertical farming is the future. But what's going to happen to the farmers when these astronomically enormous indoor vertical farm facilities have taken over every major city, locked in contracts with all major grocery store chains, and are funded by some of the same billionaire globalists who are seeking to control human beings through every industry for their fourth industrial revolution. The fact that they are moving full speed ahead on digital IDs and currencies, and it becomes even more concerning. He's talking about the absolute intentional demolition to all of our farmers on the seed, vegetable, and produce front. People should also be aware of what's been taking place with cattle ranchers and the globalist plan to take over the meat industry as well. Lab-grown meat has already been approved by the FDA and the USDA, and the labs are eagerly filling up their petri dishes to get this ball rolling. Upside Foods' lab-grown meat facility just launched in California, funded by Bill Gates, Tamasek Holdings, and 37 other investors. Meanwhile, the USDA is pushing for RFID surveillance of cattle and doing everything they can to control ranchers. First it was pigs, then it was salmon, now it's cattle. Who knows what concoction will move from the petri dish to your dinner plate when it's the same individuals behind every agenda? And this is important. To be certain, all of these goals are locked into place and the UN 2030 agenda is achieved, disrupting the fertilizer industry, food supply chain, and a rash of coincidental fires to food processing plants. Sure would help to seal the deal, wouldn't it? And we know here are all the food processing plants that have gone up in flames. And then he talks about this Alliance for a Green Revolution in Africa, AGRA, and he said one of AGRA's biggest achievements was their participation in 72 agricultural policy reforms in 11 African countries, pertaining to seed, fertilizer, and market access. Laws were created to protect intellectual property rights for certified seeds, as penalties were created for open source seed sharing. Imagine being a farmer, homesteader, or gardener and having to share and trade seeds on the black market so you don't get penalized. Anyone who believes they won't try this in the U.S. is kidding themselves, especially since the globalists hold the largest private seed banks and invest in the largest commercial seed companies. And these companies control 50% of the global seed market now. The squeeze has been taking place for decades, from the government stealing land to putting unrealistic restrictions and regulations on ranchers and farmers, controlling our free water, even rainwater, and selling out over 35.2 million acres of U.S. agricultural farmland to foreign investors, and globalists buying up hundreds of thousands of acres of farmland, all the while building indoor vertical farming backed by globalists as they roll out new energy and infrastructure regulations. While most people believe China has bought up most of the U.S. farmland, they actually hold a small percentage as compared to Canada, who holds the largest share. Then the Netherlands, Italy, Germany, and the United Kingdom. China falls last, and a big chunk of it is owned by the WH Group, Smithfield Foods in Missouri. National Geographic believes that gene editing is the next food revolution, explaining that hundreds of research and development labs are testing CRISPR's potential to produce faster-growing food with all sorts of benefits. Now in Europe, the European Union's High Court ruled to regulate gene-edited plants the same as GMOs. Of course, we didn't do that here. There's no way to sugarcoat the system they are implementing. Whereas vertical farming is brilliant in many ways and could be beneficial on a smaller scale in communities, the fact that this is the global agenda to remove farms and control all produce by the globalists themselves makes it incredibly concerning. Imagine in the not-too-distant future going for a drive in the countryside in your mandated electrical vehicle and observing dried-up farmland replaced by giant turbines. It's a very dystopian image that no one wants to experience. So we must work together to find a way forward and continue to say no to the digital ID they're creating to control our access and spending while building self-sufficiency and security. If you have helpful resources or suggestions, please share them in the comments below. So thanks for watching. Please subscribe, and I think your only hope is going to be to grow as much of your own food as you can.